I was surprised at the answer, right? At this point, now I'm a dentist on TV, but
Right.
I said, okay, oral health, right? So we got right to it, co-creating the first of its kind mobile dentistry program.
Wow. Wow. Hola y bienvenidos to Wellness 360. Whether you're a returning viewer or tuning in for the first time, we're so glad you're here. We've been talking to and learning from international healers, experts, doctors, philanthropists, and coaches from across the globe. And now we're broadcasting to 14 new countries. And this season, we're sharing thought-provoking conversations to elevate your spirit, your body, your mind. I hope these sessions will spark curiosity and action, and perhaps even deepen your connection to our planet. This season and in the future, we continue to explore innovations in health and wellness, oral health. We're learning to navigate eco-friendly lifestyles in an ever-changing world, and we're even taking a closer look at wellness trends for our furry friends. At Wellness 360, our mission is simple: to help you make informed decisions about your health by sharing fresh perspectives, breaking open certain myths and stigmas about our mental health, as well as our well-being. Plus, we're offering practical resources to support you on your path to living your best life. But we're also here to grow and learn with you. I certainly don't have all the answers, so we evolve and share the learning experience, you and I, as we plan for season 5 and so on. We'd love to hear from you. What topics are you curious about? What challenges or questions do you want us to explore? Be sure to connect with us at wellness360carmen@gmail.com and share your ideas. We want to feature the different topics that matter to you as we continue to make these seasons both transformative and full of discovery. And remember, happiness, better health, knowledge, joy, and abundance are all within reach. And if you need more one-on-one coaching, don't hesitate to reach out again to wellness360carmen@gmail.com. And as always, remember to do your own research and due diligence when reaching out to the experts and the doctors and the healers that we feature on our Wellness 360 interviews. The choice to accept or reject the information that we share with you is always your own. And today we're diving into oral health for the first time. Did you know that oral health is about it's about so much more than just a bright smile? It's a vital indicator of overall health, often serving as a first warning sign for systemic diseases like cardiovascular issues, diabetes, and osteoporosis. The oral systemic link highlights how interconnected our mouth is with the rest of our body, and maintaining good oral hygiene can reduce the risks for major health conditions. But what about those communities that lack access to dental care? Joining us today to talk with us about his inspirational project based in Nicaragua is someone who's joining us from Campbell, California. Jeff Landi was born in Queens, New York, which means that bold optimism and an incisive view of the world are built into his tapestry. An intensely curious person, he harnessed that energy to adventure to 37 countries while building a career in software that has spanned over a quarter of a century. And one of those countries was indeed Nicaragua. It was there in 2018 that Jeffrey was struck by the beauty and the difficulty of the Nicaraguan story. He decided to build a home in the coastal town of San Juan del Sur and felt a profound pull to contribute to his new community. In 2019, he founded Sonrisas Felices, a project that has brought dental services to over 15,000 people in remote villages, university scholarships to girls of low-income families, and a small business that employs differently abled people. This has become Jeff's life work. Sonrisas Felices holds a vision for the communities they serve, where all people are healthy, educated, and employed. Jeff has 2 college-age children. He's obsessed with the ocean, live music, and bedtime reading. Hello, Jeff. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. I'm excited to share with all, our Wellness 360 viewers. I'm excited to share with them what you're doing and the why.
Hi, Carmen. It is an honor to be on your program, and thank you for the invite.
I'm excited that you accepted. So what made you accept the invitation? What drew you to Wellness 360?
Well, quite honestly, you did.
Oh,
You're a new person, relatively speaking, in my life. We're getting to know each other. We're getting familiar with our
sure.
respective bodies of work, um, and and so I really just wanted to give this a try. And also, as a philanthropist, we're always trying to cut through, get our message out to different audiences. So here I
Yes.
am.
Well, good. I'm glad you said yes to the invitation. But before we dive into the work that you're doing and why you're doing it, I really want, like, just as a way for people to get to know you a little bit,
Mhm.
why are you obsessed with the ocean? And plus, I'm really curious.
Yeah. Well, I'd say the obsession goes back to when I was a little kid. I was thrown into the ocean
Okay.
by my parents. I grew up mostly on Long Island, where there's a lot of water there.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at pictures of me as a kid, Carmen, you see surfboards and lots of fish. My father was obsessed with fishing. We are 100% Italian American heritage, it's in the blood.
Yeah.
I spent my youth on the Atlantic Ocean on a small boat with my brother and my father fishing. We had a second home in a little fishing village slash beach town called Montauk in New York. And that's where I learned to surf and just really just love the ocean.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Now I know. See, I learn something new every time that we chat.
Yeah.
Now, your story in Nicaragua, as I mentioned, you ended up moving there, but what was there a specific incident or was there a certain person that inspired you to create Sonrisas Felices?
I think my chapter in Nicaragua is has been driven by a couple of life forces.
Mhm.
One of them you sort of mentioned at the top, and that is my favorite trait in people is curiosity. And I'm fortunate and grateful that that trait has been surging through me since I was a little kid.
Right.
But it was really, I'd say, a turning point that I can connect to this chapter in Nicaragua. When I was 23 years old, I had graduated college. Now, Carmen, I studied business finance in college,
Right.
and a few years in, discovered it was the absolute wrong academic for me. And I felt sort of I was too deep in to make a switch. And
Okay.
so I felt like I was in this sort of intellectual prison. I should have been a liberal arts, major. I was a savage reader of classical literature. And what I would do is bounce from country to genre to epoch. And I entered the 18th or the 19th century Russian literature phase, and I was obsessed with these authors and with these artists and books. So after I graduated with a finance degree, I pursued that curiosity as I've done my whole life.
Mhm.
I learned Russian to read, write, and speak in 10 weeks because
Wow.
that's what you can do as a 23-year-old.
Right.
And I went and toured the country, Russia and Ukraine. I came back from that trip and went on to teach English to Russian people in New York, according to the Berlitz method. I tell you this story because that is really what opened my eyes to the world
Right.
and sort of set me on a track of exploration and adventure that I put my career on pause, I think no less than 3 times to feed that curiosity.
Right. And what I'm also hearing you say, Jeff, and again, we're sort of, learning about each other, but it seems to me that it's more than just curiosity and adventure because you're helping other people
Yes.
in that process. That's yours, your journey, right? Which I think kind of leads me to you describe your work in Nicaragua as your life's purpose.
Yeah.
So, how did you when you landed in Nicaragua, how did it all come together, right? How did that happen?
So yeah, great question, because I think life force number one was about curiosity, right?
Mhm.
Which, as you say, let's just say landed me eventually in Nicaragua.
Right.
Well, why these projects that
Mhm.
are, the good projects that are helping people? This is Wellness 360, right, Carmen?
Right.
So I'm going to get a little more personal now.
Okay.
Um, I would say that the work in Nicaragua really came from a place in my life. You know, seismic things happen to us in our 40s.
Sure. Yeah, very much so.
Right. So my career was getting a little, let's just call it empty calories to me. This is another, I'd say, a second force that was at play, which I don't actually want to get into much, but
Right.
just sort of a burning desire to do something different and more meaningful. But really, the real answer to your question is relates to my daughter. So my daughter has suffered two pretty horrible traumas in her life as a young person. And these are not medical issues. These are things that happened to her. And you know, when the trauma of a child enters the bloodstream of a parent, there's nothing you can do to expel it. It becomes a management job. And so what do people do? Well, some people fold. Some people seek out talk therapy or other, you know, options in the world of psychology. I basically pursued a path that I have called emotional alchemy. There's a passage from a Nigerian artist named Ahim Ora. You might even know this quote. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't. She wrote, "Your body is not a coffin for pain to be stored in. Put it somewhere else. Let it be devoured by building brighter connections. Let it live in books, let it live in art," and it goes on and on. So this is really what drove me to essentially redirect the pain that I was experiencing through this stuff with my daughter back out into the world, into something that I could control and something that was good and meaningful to many. This, I would say, is the real impetus to why these projects even exist.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. I mean, I know that sometimes we get on these platforms and these forums and, there's something compelling about sharing these pieces of our lives because as someone's watching or listening, hopefully, maybe it's more than one person, but at least one person can hear what you just shared
Yes.
and look at the way that they're dealing with the trauma and the pain and maybe look at it from a different perspective, which is what we're trying to do, right? This is one of the key goals for Wellness 360. So I really appreciate you sharing that part. And of course there's that, like you said, this purpose driven reason. And it's such a wonderful quote. I had heard of it, but I wasn't as familiar with it as you are.
Yeah.
So there's the purpose and then there's the why. So how are they connected? How's the why interconnected with your purpose?
Yeah. You know, when my house was done being built in Nicaragua and
Mhm.
I felt just a teeny bit settled,
Right.
that's when I was like, okay, I want to do something. What do I do? Right. And to me, I used to pass this just really tough looking neighborhood on the way up to the hill to my house.
Right.
These are people that were displaced from a hurricane
Mhm.
and were living in dwellings that dirt floor, you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I do. Mhm.
Um, the idea of taking on some big housing project as a new person in Nicaragua was just felt really overwhelming to me. But
Right.
that's what got me really sort of fired up to contribute. So I just started to think about basic things like healthcare and education, which are also big categories.
They are.
Through a friend there, I said, look, there's a small hospital here. Maybe I could talk to them, right? And I wound up getting connected with the director and his team, and we had a lunch through a friend there. And I introduced myself, Carmen, and I said, I'd love to hear more about your challenges. I'd like to help. And, they could have presented a menu of challenges to me,
Sure.
but honestly, they didn't. They were pretty unequivocal. The director said, you want to know something? Oral health is
Wow.
a major problem for us. It's a major gap in what we can provide, particularly when you crawl out into remote areas. There's nothing, no services, no education on the matter.
Right.
And as doctors, they had the wisdom, they knew what that means to the health of the community down the line.
Right.
I was surprised at the answer, right? At this point, now I'm a dentist on TV, but
Right.
I said, okay, oral health, right? So we got right to it, co-creating the first of its kind mobile dentistry program.
Wow. Wow. And what I love about this story that you're sharing with us is that you actually took the time to ask what the community leaders needed. Because I think many times a lot of people trying to do good, and I think their heart's in the right place, but a lot of times people don't ask the community that they're trying to serve, what is it that you need? So I really applaud you for this because that was the key component. Because, like you said, we could have, right? You could have stood back and identified all these other needs, but they told you what they wanted, what they needed. Um, and I do want to sort of dive into a little bit deeper of in your experience, the work that you're doing, your observation. What are some of the biggest challenges that the children are facing because of that lack of dental health services?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to your first point, I never understood that concept of philanthropists or external groups just coming in and dictating. Inside out is the way.
Right, exactly.
Always. Um, so listen, I will answer that with a very recent example. We had a 7-year-old girl that we sent to private clinics to get restorative work in her mouth recently.
Right.
Part of this program is we've set up a network of private professionals and clinics,
Uh-huh.
pediatric dentists, endodontists, specialists. And when we come across cases that are too advanced for what we do in our truck or in the
Right.
mobile environment, we send folks to get the work done and we pay for that work.
Wow.
Um, this 7-year-old had rotten molars, and just a lot of problems with her baby teeth. And I think a lot of people would think, and I would before I got into this project, well, they're going to fall out anyway, and the new ones will come in and she'll get a fresh start. And it just doesn't work that way. So when you have poor oral health from child age, the problems with those baby teeth just get inherited, right? Get propelled into the secondary set, the
Right.
permanent teeth, the gums, and those problems then just keep continuing on.
Right.
And then, as we talked about, once you get up into adult age, you are really, the data is getting better around the
Mhm.
world that you are prone to a number of very serious chronic diseases. So it all starts with baby teeth.
Right.
Now, half the kids that we encountered prior to Sonrisas Felices' existence never owned a toothbrush.
Right. And
So,
a, a basic need,
yes,
right?
correct.
Thank you for sharing that story. I know that for people that are watching from all over the world now, um, what advice, if someone's looking to make, and this is a broad question, like a general question, gonna, you know, step back a little bit. When someone is trying to do good, do something for their community, and how do they get started? So if you could share with our public, just what's the number one step that could compel that work that they're imagining that they wanted to do for their community?
Yeah. I think there's, first of all, I think there's a preceding element that is absolutely crucial to this question. And that is you have to have the right lens on first. You have to see these situations and these people. I could have very easily just driven right past that
Sure.
terrible neighborhood I talked about and ignored that visual, no problem.
Right.
I remember another time I was watching some men work building a home, and they were out in just the sun, beating down on them with
Right.
pickaxes, working really hard. I saw them. I brought them mango juice, but I noticed, right, what was going on in front of me.
Right.
And too many people, I think, sort of import themselves into these countries, and they bring their bubble.
Right.
So the first thing is you have to see, and then secondly, I think it is about that inside out concept, right? It is getting connected with people, see them, get connected, not just with, right, expats or external elements, get connected with the locals,
Right.
and start asking those questions. Because the reality is you can't, especially in a environment like Nicaragua,
Mhm.
you can't. There's a lot of sensitivities politically.
Right.
You can't just bomb in and do whatever you want.
Right.
You really need to understand and navigate the system.
Right. Thank you for those insights, because I think I'm going to add, you mentioned seeing and connecting with people. And I think it's important to add to that we don't just see with our eyes. We don't just connect with our bodies, our physical beings. All of this is done through the heart, in my opinion. And I think that element of compassion and empathy is sorely needed everywhere these days,
Yes.
but particularly to those people, I think, who have traditionally been ignored or forgotten or cast aside. One person can make a difference. I mean, you've brought these services to 15,000 people. That's no small feat. That's incredible. So thank you, because you are actually doing something incredibly powerful, incredibly kind, incredibly meaningful in the world. And for everyone that's watching, I know I want to make sure that for people who are listening and people who are tuning in, and for people who are going to rewatch this, how do they connect with you? How can they help? Where do they go? And if you don't mind sharing, your information, not everyone is going to, read the social media posts. So
Yeah.
if you could let us know, let everyone know, how can they help and where do they go to do that?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your kind words, first of all. But can I just say, a little intimidating to hear about maybe someone who's brought dental services to remote villages in a foreign country to 15,000 people. Everything starts with a small step. My small step was having a lunch with some people.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But it doesn't have to turn into this all the time. And it's obviously, there are things that I see that can be done. Go do a beach cleanup one day, right? Go volunteer in the local library. These are all really small steps to create rhythm within yourself and to to get involved,
Right.
just to get involved,
Well
right?
said.
And then you never know, right, what that's going to snowball into.
Yep.
Well, Carmen, yes, I am kind of one of these LinkedIn people. I'm on there all the time.
Okay.
This is a very interesting time we're talking. January was a big month for Sonrisas Felices. We submitted all of our applications for 501c3 status.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
no
you.
small feat either.
It is not. It was a crap ton of paperwork. Wow. Um,
I warned you.
yep, you sure did. We locked down a fiscal sponsor. For those in the philanthropic world, means that even though we are not a registered nonprofit yet, we can accept donations from all sorts of funders and givers through another registered nonprofit that is a partner of ours.
That's wonderful.
Done. And we launched a new website. So I really am trying to drive people that are curious about Sonrisas Felices to our new website, sonrisasfelicesnica.org.
Okay.
And there you can read about all three of these programs, the dental, the education, and the business. And you can get in contact with me directly. I give people my phone number all the time. I love talking to donors of all stripes. I'll spend all day doing that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff Landi. Before you leave us, before we let you go, do you have a final piece of advice about any of the topics, any of the areas that you're working on, but just in general, again, for our viewers and our listeners who maybe just need a little idea to get them going?
Boy, I just love the advice of just start small, start with one small step. Donating is, is something that a lot of people can do, some can't, right?
Right.
And sometimes I get the question, Jeff, why you're doing all this work and all this energy going to Nicaragua? How come, we have problems right here in our own backyard? And it's like, well, because I see the world as one human family,
Exactly.
So I would encourage people to look in their own communities, right? On your block, in the block next to yours, and really get an understanding of how you might be able to contribute something different.
Exactly. It's the ripple effect, right? So
it's the butterfly effect.
Exactly. There you go. I love this conversation. I'm sorry, we might have to do this again later on in another season or another time, but that's it. That's, thank you to all our viewers. Thank you to all our listeners for continuing to come back or for finding us for the first time. For more information on everything Carmen Milagro, Divina World Foundation, Wellness 360, you can follow us on the socials, or you can scan the QR code that you will see at the end of this screen, on your TV screen, at the end of this session. And, once again, you can always email us at wellness360carmen@gmail.com. Thank you again. Thank you, Jeff, for helping to make the world a better place, one step at a time, like you said, one small step at a time, which then turns into something quite spectacular. So thank you again. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Carmen. I'm your coach, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.